It doesn't look like anything is wrong with him. That's the first mistake people make. No anger, no excitement, no visible pain, just nothing. And at first, it looks like strength, calm, unbothered, in control. But here's what most people don't realize. That calm isn't peace. It's a shutdown. Because men who feel nothing weren't born that way. They learned it early. And the reason why isn't what you think. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they felt too much and had to shut it off to survive. And if you don't understand this, you'll completely misunderstand him. Because the trait isn't coldness. It's something far more dangerous. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. He tells himself it doesn't affect him. I'm fine. I don't care. It is what it is. But the more he repeats it, the more it becomes real. Not because he healed, but because he shut off the part of him that was hurting. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because numbness doesn't stay contained. It spreads. At first, it protects him from pain. But then, it starts blocking everything else too. Moments that should matter, flat. People who care about him, distant. Things he worked for, empty. And this is where things start breaking. Not loudly, silently, in relationships. Because connection requires emotional presence. And he doesn't have access to it. So when someone gets close, he pulls back. Not intentionally, automatically. And the other person feels it immediately. The distance, the lack of depth. The absence of something they can't explain. So they try harder, ask more, push deeper. And to him, that feels like pressure, like danger. So he shuts down even more. Short answers, surface-level conversations, emotional absence. And now the gap widens. One person trying to connect, the other trying to stay safe. And eventually, collapses. Not because he didn't care, but because he couldn't show it. And here's the trap. Every failed connection reinforces the same belief. This is why I stay detached. This is why I don't open up. But that belief is exactly what keeps destroying everything. Because the longer this goes on, the worse it gets. It doesn't just affect relationships. It erases identity. He stops knowing what he wants, what he feels, what matters. Everything becomes neutral, replaceable. And that leads to something heavier than pain, emptiness. And here's the part no one tells him. That emptiness feels stable, safe, predictable, which makes it addictive. So he stays there, even when it costs him everything. Because feeling again would mean facing everything he buried. And that's terrifying. So instead, he disconnects further. Until one day, he's not just disconnected from others. He's disconnected from himself. And that's the real danger. Not that he feels nothing, but that he doesn't realize what he's losing. Because once you lose connection to your emotions, you lose connection to life. And the scariest part? You can live like that for years, without ever questioning it. This is where it starts to feel familiar. Not obvious, not dramatic, just small patterns you barely notice. He's the easygoing one. Nothing bothers him. No complaints. No demands. No strong reactions. But that easygoing label is often emotional absence in disguise. Because when you don't express needs, people assume you don't have any. So they stop asking. And slowly, you disappear in your own life. He becomes the listener, always there for everyone else. But when someone asks him, "What's wrong?" he freezes. Not because nothing is wrong, but because he genuinely doesn't know what to say. He lost the language for it. And this shows up in real situations. Someone opens up to him. He responds with logic instead of emotion. A relationship starts getting deeper. He suddenly feels distant. Texts feel harder to reply to. Conversations stay surface level. Not on purpose. Automatically. And the other person feels it. That shift. That drop in presence. So they start questioning, did I do something wrong? But the truth? He's not losing interest. He's losing access to the part of himself that knows how to stay. And this creates a painful pattern. He wants connection, but can't sustain it. He wants closeness, but feels uncomfortable inside it. So he ends up in the same cycle. Gets close, feels overwhelmed, pulls back, loses it. Again, and again, and again. And over time, something even worse happens. He stops knowing himself. What he wants, what he feels, what actually matters. Everything becomes neutral, replaceable, like nothing fully registers, like he's watching his own life from a distance. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, something slips through, a feeling he can't explain, not strong enough to understand, but strong enough to notice. And instead of staying with it, he distracts himself. Phone, noise, anything, because sitting with it feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. So the cycle continues. Feel, disconnect, distract, repeat, until it becomes automatic, until it becomes identity, until he starts believing, this is just who I am. But it's not. It's a pattern. And the longer it runs, the harder it becomes to break. This is where it turns inward, because now, part of him knows something isn't right. Not logically, but emotionally. There's a gap he can feel, but can't explain, and that creates a quiet conflict between who he is and who he feels he should be, because he sees other people connect, laugh deeply, love openly, express freely, and his reaction isn't jealousy, it's confusion. How does that come so naturally? Because it used to be natural for him too, before he shut it down. And now, that version of him feels distant, like a stranger. So situations that should feel simple start feeling off. Someone opens up to him. He wants to respond emotionally, but nothing comes. So he responds logically instead, and immediately feels wrong, like he missed something, but he doesn't know what. So he ignores it, moves on, but it lingers. And over time, those moments stack up, until a question starts forming. What's wrong with me? But he never says it out loud, because that would require vulnerability, and that still feels unsafe. So he does what he always does, suppresses it, pushes it down. And this is where it gets dangerous, because now he's not just avoiding emotions, he's avoiding himself. Every time he ignores that internal signal, he moves further away from who he actually is. And here's the paradox. He wants to feel again, but he's afraid of what comes with it, because feeling doesn't come back in pieces, comes back all at once. The pain, the memories, everything he buried, and that feels like chaos. So he chooses what feels safer, numbness, because numbness is predictable, controlled, stable. So now he's stuck in one of the worst positions possible, aware, but unable to change. And that creates frustration, because he sees the problem, but his body still reacts the same way. Shut down, withdraw, disconnect. And every time it happens, it reinforces the same belief. This is just who I am. But here's the truth that changes everything. That's not who he is. It's who he became. And once that realization hits, the old identity starts to crack, because now he can't unsee it. And once you see it, you can't keep pretending it's normal. This is where everything starts accelerating. Because once he becomes aware, he can't go back. And that's where the real discomfort begins. Not the numbness, but seeing it. Now every interaction feels off. Every conversation carries the same thought. I should be feeling something, but I'm not. And it follows him everywhere. He starts noticing things he used to ignore. Avoiding eye contact, changing the subject, pulling away the moment things get real. And now it's obvious. This isn't personality. It's avoidance. And that creates pressure, because awareness without control feels like a trap. He sees the pattern, but can't stop it. So he tries. Next time I'll open up. But when the moment comes, his body shuts down before his mind can react. short answers, tight chest, emotional silence. And now it's worse, because this time, he noticed it, and still couldn't change it. That's where frustration turns into helplessness. Because it's one thing to not know, it's another to know exactly what's wrong, and feel powerless to fix it. And this is where most people give up. They stop trying. Not because they don't care, but because failing feels worse than staying numb. So they go deeper into it. This is just who I am. But it's not. It's a system defending itself. Because numbness was built for survival. And survival patterns fight to stay, even when they're destroying you. And this hits hardest in relationships. Because now there's pressure from both sides. He knows he needs to open up. They're asking him to open up. And that pressure triggers shutdown. So the more someone tries to get closer, the further he pulls away, until it breaks. Not loudly, silently. Distance grows, connection fades, and once again, he's alone. And every time this happens, it reinforces the same belief. Connection doesn't last. So why try? And that belief locks everything in place. Because now numbness isn't protection anymore. It's identity. And breaking that feels like losing yourself. So he stays, disconnected from others, and now disconnected from himself, from what he wants, what he feels, what actually matters. And without that, life becomes mechanical. Wake up, work, distract, sleep, repeat. No depth, no emotion, just existence. And here's the most dangerous part. He adapts to it. Because humans can adapt to anything. Even emptiness. Even a life that doesn't feel real. And once he adapts, there's no urgency to change. Just a quiet void he learns to ignore. Until one day, something breaks through. A loss. A moment of silence. Something that hits harder than usual. And suddenly, everything he buried starts pushing up. Not slowly, not controlled, all at once. And in that moment, he realizes something terrifying. He didn't lose his emotions. He buried them, and now they're all still there, waiting, and he has no idea how to handle them. And once that happens, everything changes. Because once the wall cracks, it never goes back the same. Here's the part no one tells him. The numbness was never the problem. It was the solution. That's why it's so hard to let go. Because what looks like emptiness now was once protection. And here's the shift most people miss. He's not emotionally unavailable. He's emotionally overloaded. Everything he suppressed didn't disappear, stacked, year after year, moment after moment, unprocessed, unreleased. And his system knows, if it all comes up at once, it will overwhelm him. So it does the only thing it knows how to do, shut it down. And over time, that shutdown becomes automatic. Not a choice, a reflex, because the brain doesn't know the danger is over. It just keeps running the same pattern. Protect, suppress, avoid, even when there's nothing left to protect from. And that's the real problem. Not that he can't feel, but that his system learned. Feeling equals risk. So it avoids it completely. And this is why emotions start leaking out in strange ways. Random irritation, sudden heaviness, moments that don't make sense. That's not random. That's pressure. From everything he never processed. Because suppression isn't resolution. It's delay. And delayed emotions don't disappear. They build, quietly, until they break through. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. The moment he starts feeling again, it won't feel good. It will feel messy, unstable, overwhelming. Because he won't just feel the present. He'll feel the past too. Everything he buried comes back online. And this is where most people stop. Because they think, if this is feeling, I'd rather stay numb. But that's the illusion. That chaos isn't the problem. It's the release. And on the other side of it is something he hasn't felt in years. Clarity, connection, aliveness. But to get there, he has to stop identifying with the numb version of himself. Because that version wasn't built to live. It was built to survive. And survival has an expiration date. protects you in danger, but it disconnects you when the danger is gone. So the real question isn't, why does he feel nothing? It's, what did he have to shut down to survive? Because whatever that is, that's where everything starts. This is where everything flips. Because up until now, he thought this was just who he is. Detached, calm, unaffected. But that's not his identity. That's his adaptation. And once he sees that, he can't unsee it. Because suddenly everything makes sense. Why he pulls away. Why he feels uncomfortable with depth. Why he can't stay present emotionally. It's not random. It's learned. And if it's learned, can be unlearned. But here's the part that makes it uncomfortable. If this isn't who he is, then who is he? Because letting go of that identity means stepping into the unknown. Into a version of himself he hasn't felt in years. And that version feels unstable, unfamiliar, but real. And then something else hits him. The traits he was proud of weren't what he thought. That independence came from having no one to rely on. That emotional control was suppression. That low expectations were protection from disappointment. That wasn't strength. That was survival. And realizing that shakes everything. Because now he has to question not just how he acts, but why. And here's the shift that changes everything. He stops asking, "What's wrong with me?" and starts asking, "What happened to me?" And that question opens the door, because he was never emotionless. He was emotionally unprotected. And those are not the same thing, because nothing is missing. It was just never supported. And what was never supported can be rebuilt, slowly, safely. And now, for the first time, he can see his patterns in real time, not to judge them, but to understand them, because every reaction has a reason. And once you see the reason, the pattern starts to lose control. And this is the real shift. He stops seeing numbness as who he is and starts seeing it as something he learned. And anything learned can be unlearned. Not instantly, not perfectly, but intentionally, one moment at a time. And for the first time, he's not moving away from himself anymore. He's moving toward himself. This is where it all comes together. Because once he sees it, everything changes. Not instantly, but fundamentally. For the first time, he understands he's not broken. He adapted. And that realization removes the shame. Because now, the numbness isn't a flaw. It's a defense. The distance isn't disinterest. It's protection. The silence isn't emptiness. It's emotion with nowhere to go. And once he sees that, he stops fighting himself and starts understanding himself. And that's where change actually begins. Not by forcing emotion, but by allowing it. In small moments, he notices what he used to ignore, the tension, the discomfort, the subtle reactions. And instead of shutting them down, he stays just a little longer. And that's enough. Because feeling again isn't about intensity. It's about access. And access builds over time. And slowly, something returns. Not all at once, but enough to notice. A real reaction. A moment of presence. A sense that he's actually there again. And that's when it hits him. This is what was missing. Not success. Not control. Connection. To people. To life. To himself. And here's the truth most people never realize. Men who feel nothing don't feel too little. They feel too much without knowing how to process it. So they shut it down. But once they learn how to face it, everything changes. Because on the other side of numbness is everything they've been avoiding. The pain, yes, but also the meaning, the depth, the aliveness. And this time, they don't have to run from it, because now they understand. And once you understand, you can choose differently, not perfectly, not instantly, but intentionally. And that's the difference between surviving and actually living.